Ladies and gentlemen, the day has finally come. The day that we have waited more than 14 years for. The Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny trailer has finally arrived. Now, if you know Andreas and I, you know that we love Indiana Jones more than the air that we breathe. We absolutely love this franchise, so we knew we couldn't just do some standard breakdown and reaction to this trailer. No. Indiana Jones deserves better than that. So what have we done? We have painstakingly gone frame by frame through this Indy 5 trailer. We have taken to the internet to do our research, and we have put together a list of 20 huge plot details that you may have missed in the Indy 5 trailer. You're definitely going to want to stick through this entire video and hear every plot detail that we found from this trailer. It's going to be a great time. Andreas, are you ready to get into this?
Oh yeah, let's get some Indy.
Let's get into plot detail number 1. So the trailer opens up on a desert town with a car chase featuring Indy, Helena, and some unknown assailants. And then the next shot right after that shows what appears to be a 1960s era Moroccan Al-Maghrib license plate. I'm sure, Andreas, I completely butchered that. Like, is that how you say that?
That's not far off. Yeah, no, you can see right here on this frame right here, there's Arabic on the back of that black license plate with numbers. This is a pretty classic Moroccan license plate, black with Arabic, and you can pretty clearly see that the Arabic does say Al-Maghrib, which is not a proper pronunciation either, but it does mean Morocco. That's how you say Morocco in Arabic, and it's on the back of a tuk-tuk, which is a very common street car that you would find in Morocco, which makes perfect sense because they filmed in Morocco. They filmed in Fez for this movie, right, Nick?
Yep, they sure did. Now, additionally, there are some additional shots that we'll just show after the fact because this is later on in the trailer, but it is from this same car chase sequence. And at one point, one of the cars crosses in front of a building, and it appears to have the Moroccan green star on that building. So now we know, just from these little details, that this car chase actually takes place in Morocco, which is really cool, because you really have no idea from the trailer where this takes place, but it's in Morocco, so that's really cool. Now, the next scene I want to talk about, the next plot detail, we see the shot cut to Indy walking down one of the streets in a gray suit, presumably on his way to teach his university class. Now, this actually is in New York City, and the way we know that is there is a car right in front of Indy, right to the left of him. And if you look at the license plate on that car, that is a 1969 era New York State license plate. So it looks like Indy is actually living in New York City and teaching in New York City, or perhaps he is a guest teacher or a guest professor, but he is at a university in New York City. Now, the next plot point I want to talk about is one of the bigger ones. We see Indy and two others, possibly Helena or Antonio Banderas' character, diving underwater. Now, we know from previous set photos that these three filmed on a boat in wetsuits on the port of Marsala in Sicily, Italy. Now, they appear to be coming up on some sort of shipwreck, and that boat, that shipwreck that they're coming up on, looks an awful lot like those leaked set pictures of the Roman soldiers on the Roman boats a while back, don't they, Andreas?
Yeah, I mean, you can see what looks like those long oars as well, kind of sticking out of the side, but it's got that shape of that old Roman boat. I think that's it. It's just obviously wrecked. It ain't what it used to be, is it?
No, it's definitely not. So this scene appears to have been filmed in Sicily, and that would line up with the Roman boat shipwreck. Sicily, Italy, Roman boat shipwreck. So looks like we're getting some either some Roman soldier and Roman boat flashback sequences, or they're going to be involved in perhaps a time travel sequence. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Now, the next plot point I want to talk about, the next plot detail, is the next shot. We see Indy teaching in a classroom full of college students. Now, he is going over an image of what appears to be pottery on a projector, and the image is quite fuzzy. It's pretty compressed on YouTube, so it's hard to make out the exact details, but it looks like the object has perhaps like a Viking Nordic knot logo like on the front and center of the pod. I can't exactly tell just because of how blurry it is, but it looks like it's that kind of cross weave logo. Again, it's a really blurry picture, and I am no expert when it comes to pottery, so I have no idea if this pot fits within the Nordic culture. I just thought it was really interesting, if that turns out to be the case, just where this pot, what they're talking about in the class, what culture they're talking about. Makes me wonder if that will have anything to do with the overall story of the film, or it will just be, what they happen to be talking about in class that day. I just thought that was really interesting. So the next shot, Andreas, that we see is Indy and Helena crossing a bridge in a cave. Now, that looks awfully familiar, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. I think this was one of the very first images, if not the first image that we saw of Indy in Indy 5 crossing that rope bridge, that rickety rope bridge. And here it is now. We're seeing it play out in an actual movie format. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, it's really cool. Now, I think this is part of the underground sequence that is going to take place in Sicily or Syracuse. I think all of these underground shots are all going to be coming from the same location. I think this is the same underground cave or underground area. So I think it's really cool that we actually got to see in the trailer the very first shot that we saw, or the picture we saw at Star Wars Celebration of Indy 5. I thought that was just a really cool addition to this trailer. Now, next up, we actually cut to the first of the World War II era flashback sequences. We see two Nazi soldiers dragging Indy with a bag over his head in front of Bamberg Castle, which is located in Scotland. Now, we're not sure if that is what the castle will be called or if that's where it will be located in the film, but this is indeed the location that this portion of the film was filmed at. If we had to guess, this is probably going to be a German castle. It's not going to be a Scottish castle because the Nazis weren't in Scotland. So we're guessing this is going to be some sort of German or Western European castle. Now, it is interesting to note from this scene, the castle's under attack, so some shit is going down in this sequence. They are under attack, and you can clearly see that Indy is in a Nazi uniform. So was he undercover? Was he trying to infiltrate? If he was, it didn't work because he got captured. So looks like there is a lot going on in this flashback sequence. Now, next up, we get a night shot of a person, presumably Indy, but it could be another character, running along the top of that famous Nazi train that everyone has been talking about that will be in this film since they started filming. So we now have confirmation that the Nazi train is indeed going to play a part in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Now, of course, the next shot, let's move on to the next plot detail. The next one shows one of the characters chasing an airplane attempting to take off down a runway. Now, we can't exactly tell who this character is, but Andreas, we've seen something like this before, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. We have seen images of none other than a de-aged Indiana Jones on a motorcycle that looks awfully familiar to this motorcycle. Now, this isn't the only motorcycle that we do see in this trailer. Later on, we're going to see another motorcycle for just a split second, but it's got a sidecar on it, and it looks like Indy might be in that sidecar. So I'm not sure if Indy is just on that motorcycle or in this motorcycle, but honestly, I would not be surprised if we got this badass scene of Indiana Jones chasing down an airplane in this torrential downpour that's occurring on this runway. This is just a super cool scene. And Nick, you actually did some digging and found out what exact plane that is, right?
Yeah, I really wanted to find out what exact plane he was chasing because it definitely looks like he is chasing an airplane down the runway. So the airplane that is attempting to take off, it appears to be a World War II era transport plane. And if you notice, the plane also has two tails on it. And assuming it is a Luftwaffe German plane, it looks like it's a Siebel SI-204. And there actually is a shot later on in the trailer that we can overlay that shows the front portion of what we are assuming to be that exact same airplane. I don't know why there would be multiple different airplanes in this, but we're just going to work under the assumption that it is the same plane. And the front of that plane looks just like the Siebel SI-204. Now, what's interesting to me about this, Andreas, is this appears to be another flashback sequence to the World War II era with the young de-aged Indy, and he's chasing a transport plane. So what that tells me is there is either somebody or something that is on that plane that Indy really wants to get his hands on. He does not want to let that go. So Very interested to see what that object or person on that plane is that Indy just has to catch. He is so desperate to catch it that he will take a motorcycle into a terrible storm, down a runway trying to catch a very fast-moving plane. That is desperation. Now, the next shot that I want to talk about is we get a shot of Indy walking into an archive of artifacts, most likely at the university that he is teaching at. Now, the setup looks similar to the setup he had in his office for the Last Crusade. And off to the side, we see two statues or busts, and one appears to be Egyptian in nature, and the other one, to me, Andreas, looks like it is an ancient Roman bust. It doesn't look like an ancient Greek bust. It looks like an ancient Roman bust. So we have an Egypt statue, and we have a Roman statue. Now, of course, these busts could just happen to be there, or perhaps they are clues to the locations that we will visit and the overall plot point of this film, because we do know from a later plot detail that we will get into that we are going to Egypt. Now, the next shot is actually the one about Egypt. I forgot that I put this next on the list, so let's just talk about Egypt. The next shot we see is the first time we get to see Sallah in this trailer. How wonderful that is that he finally gets to come back in an Indy film. That's just great. I'm so happy for him. Now, he is clearly talking to Indy, and it looks like he's actually dropping him off at the airport. Now, we are going to assume that this is in Cairo, Egypt, since that is where Sallah does in fact live. The airport looks rather large and populated, so we are going to just assume that this is Cairo International Airport or some rendition representing it. It doesn't have to be the actual Cairo International Airport. It could just be just a version of it. And we do know that Cairo International Airport did take over for the Heliopolis Airport in Cairo in 1963. So in 1969, which is where this scene takes place, the Cairo International Airport does exist. So we know for a fact that at some point, it looks like Indiana Jones is going to make his way to Egypt. So we are going all over the place. We're going to Sicily, we're going to Morocco, we're going to Egypt, we're going somewhere probably in Germany with those flashback sequences. Like, this is a complete globe-trotter film, which is really, really cool, isn't it, Andreas?
Yeah, we're really going all over the place in this film. And, we're also not just going to these hustling, bustling cities like Fez and Cairo. We're also doing a lot of underground stuff. A lot of stuff, Indiana Jones lurking around in caves, which is what we want to see. And that kind of brings us into this next scene. We see Indiana Jones lurking around in another cave. Not sure if it's the same cave as before with the rope bridge, but it definitely has that same environment to it. But this time he's looking at a statue. Looks like it is a weathered bronze statue. It's kind of got that like green tinge to it, right? And we did some digging and found out what this statue is, and it looks like it is a statue of Athena, right, Nick?
Yeah, this one took a lot of digging. There was a lot of research involved to figure out exactly who this statue was, but I really wanted to figure out who this was, and it looks like from the characteristics of the statue, this is a statue of Athena. If you look at other pictures of statues of Athena from all over the world, she has that like chest plate with like the snakes on it. She's holding the staff, and then there's like that scroll thing in her other hand with like wings on it. At least that's what it looks like to me. But there are a lot of shared characteristics, so to me this looks like a statue of Athena. Now obviously up to this point we have been dealing with Rome when it comes to the ancient elements of the film. That's what we've been talking about, are ancient Roman elements. However, we know that this film has portions that take place in Sicily, which is the ancient city of Syracuse. Now, in 5 BC, the tyrant Gallo actually built the Temple of Athena in Syracuse, so there is definitely a tie between Athena and Sicily, despite Sicily being in modern-day Italy. Additionally, there are rumors going around that the period of Archimedes plays a role in this film. Perhaps he is actually the creator of the Dial of Destiny. Now, how this all ties together is through the Siege of Syracuse, where the Romans attempted to lay siege to the city. However, the city was able to successfully defend itself from the Romans due to weapons created by Archimedes. So we have Romans, we have Athena, we have Archimedes. It's all kind of starting to come together. So let's move on and talk about the next important plot detail. Now, next up, we go back to the World War II flashback sequence with the Nazi train, and we clearly see a de-aged Indy as he stands on top of the train, standing alongside Basil. That is Toby Jones' character. He is ready to take on a Nazi enemy also on top of the train. So What's important here is that this just confirms that this is another flashback sequence to a de-aged Indy. So what this tells me, Andreas, is that these flashback sequences are going to be crazy, or this long flashback sequence perhaps at the beginning of the film, because we know Indiana Jones films like to have their very long, like 20-minute sequence at the beginning of the film, like a tangential sequence. It's going to be crazy. We got castles on fire, we got Nazi trains, we have Indy chasing a plane going down the runway on a motorcycle, like Fast and the Furious style. Like, these flashback sequences are going to be crazy.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy to think is this isn't the first time that we're having a flashback sequence in Indiana Jones, or a, I guess, quote-unquote de-aged Indiana Jones. As we know, The Last Crusade started off with a young Indiana Jones, which is technically kind of a flashback sequence. So, you know, maybe this film also starts with a flashback sequence, just like The Last Crusade. On a train, too, nonetheless. The Last Crusade vibes are going strong in this one.
And that's not where the Last Crusade vibes end. The next shot we get in the trailer, we get our first really good look at an up-close de-aged Indy, and I just gotta say, it looks phenomenal. This is the best de-aging technology we have ever seen in Hollywood. This blew me away when I saw this in the trailer. Now, he is in a Nazi uniform, and from the insignia on his collar, it appears that it is a Hauptsturmführer uniform, which is the equivalent to the rank of captain. So he grabbed this uniform off a Nazi captain. So there was a little struggle involved to get this uniform. And you know, the little cool thing about this shot that I really liked is him being tied to that chair and with the fireplace in the background. That's what really reminded me of that Castle Grunwald sequence in The Last Crusade. Like, the vibes are really strong here. But definitely looks like Indy got captured, and looks like he's going to be interrogated for what he did. So not a good time for Indy right now. Now, the next scene in the trailer, we get our very first look at Mads Mikkelsen's character, Voltaire. And he is actually opening a wood box that has a Nazi swastika stamped on the top of it. And why I wanted to point this out is it makes me wonder if what is inside this box is perhaps what is in the transport plane that Indy is chasing. So it looks like this is a pretty important object. Like, there's Nazi soldiers all over the place, like armed Nazi soldiers. So clearly this is something important inside this box. So it just makes me wonder if whatever the object is that is inside this box, perhaps the dial or perhaps something else, maybe that is what Indy is trying to chase down on that airplane. And then the next shot we get is a quick shot of Voller in his Nazi officer uniform. And from the insignia on his collar, he appears to be an Oberführer, which that doesn't have a direct comparison to our military, but it has been described in the past as a senior colonel rank. Now, the reason that this is important, Andreas, is because this is like a legit bad guy. Like, he is a high-ranking Nazi military official. Like, he's a bad dude. And we know from other information we've gotten about his character that Voller's character is going to be loosely based off of Werner von Braun, the actual Werner von Braun responsible for the Saturn V rocket. And I don't know, like, I don't think Werner von Braun was some high-ranking military Nazi official, but it appears that NASA picked a bad one in this one, because we know they're going to recruit him as a part of Operation Paperclip in this film, and they're getting like a legit bad Nazi guy out of this. Like, he's not like someone to be trifled with. This is a legit bad dude. Now, the next important plot detail we want to talk about is we finally get a money shot of what we believe to be the mechanism. That is perhaps the reason that this is called the Dial of Destiny. Now, we believe this dial may actually be a reference to the Antikythera mechanism. Now, the research team behind this mechanism believes that the origin of the object may have actually come from Syracuse, which is the home of Archimedes. The research team in the past has argued that there might actually be a connection between that mechanism and the School of Archimedes. However, it is important to note that further research in 2017 has argued that certain elements of the mechanism doesn't quite match up for it to originate out of Syracuse. So I thought it was just important to note. But we do believe, that this mechanism is inspired by this other object that has been tied to Archimedes and Syracuse in the past. And we do believe that this object is indeed the Dial of Destiny. Now, the next important shots in the trailer actually take us to the ticker tape parade celebrating the success of the Apollo 11 moon landing. Now, this parade took place on August 13th, 1969 in New York City, and we know that Indy is in New York City at some point. Now, we do see Indy riding a horse down the middle of the parade, and then we do get our first good look at Boyd Holbrook's character, whose name is actually Kleber. And Kleber has been described as a lapdog for Volare. Now, what's interesting about this is that he is chasing him down, so this whole sequence of events has started while Indy is in New York City. Volare is after Indy. Something goes down while he's in New York City, and Volare wants to get to Indy, and I just think that is incredibly interesting, don't you think, Andreas?
Oh yeah, we're gonna actually get to see, an older Indiana Jones actually fighting, and it looks like he's getting into a bit of a scrum later on at this ticker tape parade, isn't he?
Yeah, he sure is. Well, actually, we'll get to that in a minute. Now, we just have 3 more plot details that I want to go over before we get out of here. The first one is we actually get a shot of Indy and Helena using, or Helena, not Helena, Helena. I'm having a hard time saying that name. I don't know why. Helena using a rope to pull a boulder out of the hands of what appears to be a statue of Atlas. And the boulder would be the, quote, world in that case. It appears to be a statue of Atlas. Now, if you look behind him, there's actually writing on the walls, and we believe that that is Doric Greek, which happens to be the language of both Archimedes and ancient Syracuse. So perhaps another link to Archimedes and Syracuse. It just continues to happen with these Roman and Greek and Carthage links all kind of just coming together throughout this trailer. These are all theories and leaks that we've had about the plot for this film over the last few years. And you can just really see the elements of these leaks kind of start to show up in this trailer. And I just think that is really interesting. Now, the second to last plot point that I want to talk about is, now from here on out, we get a quick succession of shots to kind of finish off this trailer. And this is where we see more of this ticker tape parade. We see Indy fighting amongst anti-war protesters in the middle of that Apollo 11 parade. And then we see Kleber actually firing off a Luger to subdue the crowd so that he can get to Indy and try to, whatever he wants to do to him, capture him, kill him, or fight him, or whatever he's trying to do. And then we see a few shots of Indy riding his horse from the Apollo 11 parade into the New York City subway. So this whole sequence with the Apollo 11 parade is going to take place on foot, and then it's going to transition to horse in the middle of the parade, and then it's going to go down into the New York subway. So this is a very long, drawn-out, lengthy sequence of this film. This is going to be what appears to be a very important sequence in Indy 5, and it revolves around that Apollo 11 parade. We know NASA, Operation Paperclip, the space race takes place in 1969, is going to be very important thematically surrounding this film, and it looks like this is going to be a very key sequence in this film. Now, let's talk about the final plot detail that we found in this trailer. We see more shots from that Nazi train flashback sequence, and they just confirm that this is in fact a de-aged Indy, a flashback sequence, because we see him up close. And it shows that he is actually not fighting Volare. He's fighting some other random Nazi officer. It's not Volare that he's fighting in this case. I know some people we had seen on the internet had thought perhaps this was the first time he had gone toe-to-toe with Volare, but it actually is a completely different random Nazi officer. I think just the important thing, I think we all assumed that this was a flashback sequence, but that up-close shot of the de-aged Indy does in fact confirm that this is a flashback sequence aboard that Nazi train. It's going to be crazy. This film's going to be crazy, don't you think, Andreas? This looks like it's going to be a fun time.
Yeah, it does, Nick. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Wow, it's been so long, so many years, and we finally have a title, The Dial of Destiny. Dial of Destiny. It's going to take me a while to get used to this one because, there are only so many Indiana Jones movies, and this one looks like it's going to be really great. I love how globetrotty it looks, and I just hope that it puts a cherry on top of Harrison Ford's work throughout this series. I really am looking forward to this one, and I know you are too, right, Nick?
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to Indy 5. I hope it's great. I hope that this final adventure lives up to the hype that we are going to have for it, because we're going to have very high expectations for this film, so I definitely hope it lives up to it. Let us know down below in the comments, are you excited for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? What did you think about the trailer that released out of Brazil today? Was it awesome? Did it not really live up to your expectations? Did it go above and beyond your expectations? Let us know down below in the comments. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for us for this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, we will see you all next time.